Liberia, a small West African nation, is often overlooked in the annals of history. Yet, it holds a singularly remarkable legacy in the world. It was founded by freed slaves from the United States. Keep watching as we embark on a fascinating journey through time, tracing the footsteps of the freed slaves who founded Liberia. Along the way, we shall uncover the challenges they faced, the achievements they accomplished, and the lasting legacy they left behind. Please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe button. It helps our channel grow and allows us to make more videos like this one. The seeds of Liberia's founding were sown in the early 19th century when the American Colonization Society was established in the United States. This organization aimed to create a colony in Africa for freed slaves who faced discrimination and marginalization in their homeland. The ACS, as it was also known, believed that by resettling these individuals in Africa, they would be able to enjoy greater freedom and opportunities while also promoting the gradual abolition of slavery in the United States. In 1820, the first group of freed slaves set sail from the United States, bound for the shores of West Africa. The voyage was fraught with peril and hardship, as these pioneers faced not only the dangers of the open sea but also the uncertainties of their new lives in a foreign land. By 1847, some 300 black settler families from the United States had set up an independent republic. For more than 100 years, from 1877 to 1980, Liberia was governed under a one-party system in which the same party, the true Whig Party, controlled by the same elite group, held office continuously, dispensing patronage, deciding on public appointments and retaining a monopoly on power, a record equaled by no other political party anywhere in the world. Elections were nevertheless taken seriously, if only to determine which family emerged on top. Namely, the Barclays, the Kings, or the Tubmans. As members of a ruling aristocracy, the Americo-Liberians, as they called themselves, were immensely proud of their American heritage. They developed a lifestyle reminiscent of the antebellum South, complete with top hats and mourning coats and Masonic lodges. They built houses with pillared porches, gabled roofs and dormer windows resembling the 19th century architectural styles of Georgia, Maryland, and the Carolinas. They chose as a national flag a replica of the American Stars and Stripes, with a single star, and used the American dollar as legal tender. Just like white settlers in Africa, the Americo-Liberians constructed a colonial system subjugating the indigenous population to rigid control and concentrating wealth and privilege in their own hands. Despite their origins as descendants of slaves from the Deep South, they regarded black Liberians as an inferior race, fit only for exploitation. The nadir of Americo-Liberian rule came in 1931 when an international commission found senior government officials guilty of involvement in organized slavery. When other West African states shed colonial rule in the 1960s, the Liberian system stayed much the same. Liberian law stipulated that only property owners were entitled to the vote, so the vast majority of indigenous Africans were effectively left without one. Small numbers were assimilated into the ranks of the ruling elite, country boys adopted by coastal families, girls selected as wives or concubines, or ambitious hinterlanders climbing the ladder. During the 1970s, a few were co-opted into government. Local administration in the hinterland was largely run by indigenous officials. But essentially, Liberia remained an oligarchy where 1% of the population controlled the rest, some 2 million people. The last of the line of Americo-Liberian presidents was William Tolbert, the grandson of freed South Carolina slaves who had served as vice president for 20 years. A Baptist minister, he attempted a series of cautious reforms, abandoning the top hat and tailcoat traditions favored by his predecessor, William Tubman, selling the presidential yacht and abolishing a compulsory tithe of 10% of every government employee's salary that went to the true Whig Party. But much of Tolbert's efforts were also devoted to amassing a personal fortune and promoting the interests of family members in the traditional manner. One brother was appointed Minister of Finance, another was chosen a President of the Senate, a son-in-law served as Minister of Defense, other relatives filled posts as ministers, ambassadors, and presidential aides. Economic development in the 1960s and 1970s helped underpin the system, as well as provide new opportunities for the elite's self-enrichment. The mainstay of the economy had initially been rubber. In 1926, the Firestone Tire and Rubber Company leased 1 million acres for 99 years at 6 cents an acre to meet the American demand for car tires. Today, the Firestone plantation remains one of the largest rubber plantations in the world. But iron ore exports from massive, high-grade deposits in the Bomi Hills then overtook rubber as the major source of foreign investment and government income. By 1970, Firestone and the Liberian Iron Mining Company were providing the government with 50% of greatly increased revenues. A third source of income came from registration fees from the world's largest ghost fleet of ships. Liberia possessed only 2 ships of its own, but allowed more than 2,500 vessels plying the seas to fly Liberia's flag of convenience without the bother of inspection for a suitable fee. Liberia's economic advances, however, served only to highlight the growing disparity between the ostentatious lifestyle of the rich elite and the overwhelming majority of impoverished tribal Africans. In 1979, the same year that Tolbert spent an amount equivalent to half the national budget while acting as host to an OAU Heads of State Conference, demonstrators took to the streets in protest against a 50% increase in the price of rice, the staple food of most Liberians. The price increase had been authorized by Tolbert in the hope of encouraging local production. But since one of the chief beneficiaries was the president's cousin, Daniel Tolbert, who owned the country's largest rice importing firm, it was seen as another move to enrich the elite. On Tolbert's orders, armed police and troops opened fire on the demonstrators, killing dozens of them. In the following months, Tolbert struggled to contain a rising tide of discontent, colliding not just with the poor but with a new generation of the educated elite. He allowed the formation of an opposition party, but when opposition politicians called for a general strike, he had them arrested on charges of treason and sedition and banned the party. On the night of April 12, 1980, a group of 17 dissident soldiers led by a 28-year-old master sergeant named Samuel Doe scaled the iron gate of the president's 7-story executive mansion, overpowered the guards, and found Tolbert in his pajamas in an upstairs bedroom. They fired 3 bullets into his head, gouged out his right eye, and disemboweled him. His body was dumped in a mass grave along with 27 others who died defending the palace. Ministers and officials were rounded up, taken before a military tribunal, and sentenced to death. Amid much jubilation, watched by a crowd of thousands laughing and jeering, and filmed by camera crews, 13 high-ranking officials were tied to telephone poles on a beach in Monrovia and executed by a squad of drunken soldiers, firing volley after volley at them. A great shout arose from the mob. At his first press conference, Sergeant Doe strode into the ballroom of the executive mansion wearing a wide-brimmed Army Ranger hat, crisply pressed fatigues, and combat boots. He carried a ceremonial sword, a magnum revolver, and a walkie-talkie radio. In faltering English, he read a prepared statement, handled 2 brief questions, and then sat down. Sergeant Doe was then the youngest and lowest-ranking soldier to seize power in Africa. He was what Americo-Liberians called a country boy, a semi-literate tribesman with only basic education and limited intelligence. What inspired Doe and his group of fellow conspirators to storm the executive mansion was not a plan for revolution, but simply grievances over poor living conditions in army barracks. They possessed no political objectives, no policy ambitions, no guiding ideology, other than to set themselves up in power. A new era of rule in Liberia had begun, one which would eventually become a brutal military dictatorship.